This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The Associated Press quoted the Somali Prime Minister Ali Mohammed Ghadi saying that the government has won the war against the armed groups. Ghadi also said that the major battles with the armed Somalis had ended. Meanwhile, the Ethiopian forces have enforced their control over the strategic area of Al-Mishawi Market in Mogadishu. According to the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the Ethiopian and American intervention in Somalia has destroyed its fragile economy.
اليوم التاسع من المواجهة المفتوحة بين قوات الحكومة الانتقالية وداعمها الجيش الإثيوبي.
This is the 9th day of the open confrontations between the interim government forces backed by the Ethiopian government and the armed Somali tribes and Islamists. Some of the fiercest battles are probably taking place today within the framework of what the interim government calls a military campaign to get rid of the rebellion. However, it seems that it is not easy for the government to achieve this desire. Fighters from the largest tribe in Mogadishu, the Hawiya tribe, are still in control. Ethiopian tanks and artilleries have been intensely shelling them along with their supporters. Residents in Mogadishu say that they can barely lift their heads due to the intensity of the shelling. They have also reported that all kinds of weapons have been used, including bullets and anti-aircraft missiles. The Ethiopian and interim government forces launched a war against the Islamic Courts Administration in the beginning of this year, ending their 6-month rule. Since then, Mogadishu has not seen calm.
تلك فترة تشكل بحسب المعهد الملكي البريطاني للشؤون الدولية عصرا ذهبيا.
A report by the Royal Institute of International Affairs said that these 6 months were a golden age when compared with what is happening in Somalia today. According to the report, the interim Somali government does not have the confidence of the Somali people, and it does not represent strong groups there. The interim government accuses those who oppose it of creating chaos and said that it will eradicate them. It denies accusations that its forces, along with the Ethiopian forces, have committed war crimes against civilians in Mogadishu. However, Somali civilians have their own story. According to eyewitnesses, dead bodies are left in the streets of Mogadishu for days because no one is permitted to remove them. According to Somali paramedics, more than 300 people were killed just in recent clashes. If this is happening to the dead, one can only imagine what is happening to the living. Hospitals are being shelled and the humanitarian situation is tragic. Mogadishu today looks like a ghost town, although it is the crowded capital of 1 million people. The UN announced that 350,000 Somalis have been displaced. They fled for their lives without having a certain destination in mind and without guarantees that they will be receiving shelter or aid.
أو تقديم معونات.
بكم. إسرائيل لا تريد تنفيذ عملية عسكرية واسعة النطاق في
Israel does not want to carry out a wide military incursion in Gaza and is settling for a contained operation instead. This was the conclusion reached by the inter-Israeli cabinet concerned with security, which met to discuss its response to rockets aimed at Israel by the Palestinian resistance.
بتعرض إسرائيل لقصف صاروخي من قطاع غزة.
The inhabitants of Gaza are holding their breath in anticipation of what the occupation army might do. They are accustomed to the tactics and language used by the occupation and are preparing for a cruel offensive by storing supplies and provisions that are already scarce due to the blockade. Our reporter from Gaza, Zuhair Sakala, visited Beit Hanun and lived these moments of waiting and preparation with a family there.
نحن الآن في بلدة بيت حانون شمالية قطاع غزة.
We are now in the town of Beit Hanun in northern Gaza, which has endured many crimes by the Israeli occupation, and here it is today, anticipating yet a more brutal invasion. We will now try to go into the house of Ibrahim al-Zanien. Peace be upon you. In the past, this house has received its share of aggression from the occupation. Ibrahim and his family are threatened by what might be coming, and there is no escaping this waiting game.
We've had 41 invasions in Beit Hanoun, and each time before an invasion, our nerves tense up as we wait and we store any supplies that are available to us, flour, different kinds of oil, and so forth.
The occupation military received orders to carry out a land invasion on specific areas in the Gaza Strip under the pretext of stopping the Palestinians from firing rockets. This is not a new pretext, and when used in the past, it only caused more killing and suffering for the inhabitants. So what are they to do?
The truth of the matter is that Israelis should stop the aggression and the killing of different Palestinian groups. Based on this, we are willing to stop launching rockets, no matter what the circumstances are.
In Beit Hanoun, no matter how many times they invade us, our resistance will bravely persist, and we will not succumb.
The conditions of the Palestinians worsen each day. The blockade left them with little means of living, and the occupation is again threatening them with more suffering. So what can these inhabitants do but practice patience and remain persevering? Zuhair Sakala, Dhabi TV from the town of Beit Hanoun, North Gaza.
Meanwhile, Israeli forces are trying to find lessons from the war in August with Lebanon in a perpetual state of readiness.
Attorney General Menachem Azouz is expected to decide very soon whether to order another criminal investigation against Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. This following yesterday's submission by State Comptroller Michael Lindenstrauss of his report into what is being called the Silicat affair. IBA's Eli Wargelenter has the details.
Prime Minister Ehud Olmert finds himself on the cusp of yet another criminal investigation, this time for allegedly intervening on behalf of the Silicat company that was given preferred status and a $10 million government grant to establish a factory in Dimona. The company was represented by Olmert's close friend and former law partner, Uriel Messer, and took place when Olmert was serving as Minister of Industry and Trade. According to Lindenstrauss, Olmert's involvement in the affair, quote, in spite of the evident conflict of interest, raises suspicions of corruption. The Prime Minister's Bureau issued a sharp rebuke yesterday against the report, as well as against the State Controller himself. The Prime Minister has lost his confidence in the State Controller, whose behavior in this matter has broken records for its lack of professionalism and bias, the statement read. The Prime Minister also accused Lindenstrauss of caring only about television ratings and timing his work based on media deadlines. If the Attorney General does choose to initiate a criminal investigation, it will run in parallel with another current police investigation, that one into Olmert's alleged role while serving as finance minister in the sale of the controlling share of Bank Leumi. And to make matters worse for the Prime Minister, the State Controller is expected to publish a report soon on yet another affair involving the Prime Minister, this on the purchase of his house on Premier Street in Jerusalem. Olmert allegedly received a discount of several $100,000 when he purchased the home in exchange for influence peddling. And all this on the eve of perhaps the most explosive report of all, the Winograd Committee findings on the Lebanon war, to be released Monday and expected to be highly critical of the Prime Minister. Eli Wargelenter, IBA News.
Last night, just a few days before publication of the Winograd interim report, Prime Minister Olmert defended the outcome of the Lebanon war. He was addressing the New York Jewish Federation that came to Jerusalem to celebrate its 90th anniversary.
There is no more one single Hezbollah soldier or fighter or terrorist, you name it, who can threaten the security of the Israeli citizens along the borderline as it was a year ago. Not one Hezbollah, not one bunker, nothing of this nature. We may have been used in the past to have wars with a knockout end to it. We didn't have it this time. But when we said at the beginning of the war that we will create a new situation so that no more we will have to bear the daily threat of the Hezbollah over the Israeli population in the north part of the country. We carried it out.
In other news, former Knesset member Azmi Bashara will be arrested the moment he returns to Israel. This according to police sources commenting on the allegations that Bashara violated state security during the Second Lebanon War. The details of those allegations against Bashara are still under a court-imposed gag order. Defenders of Bashara say the accusations are an attempt to intimidate the controversial former lawmaker. The accusations came to light yesterday when the court partially lifted its gag order. Bashara faces charges of aiding the enemy during wartime, passing information to the enemy and contacts with a foreign agent. He's also suspected of money laundering and receiving large sums of money from abroad. The Petah Tikva Magistrates Court announced that the gag order will be lifted completely in 1 week's time. Interior Minister Ronnie Bar-On says that Bashara's citizenship should be revoked immediately, but not all of the Knesset members agree.
The suspicion against Bashara is about aiding and abetting an enemy during war, and some more offenses that are concerning Israeli security.
The accusation in the police statement are false, are lies. Dr. Bashara al-Balad denies all these accusations.
When it comes to occupation, Palestine and Iraq share several common denominators, including the infamous apartheid wall.
Perhaps the United States President George W. Bush got the idea to build an apartheid wall in Iraq from Ehud Olmert and his alien predecessor Ariel Sharon. Israel was the first country to come up with the idea of an apartheid wall, which it named a separation wall, and built it on Palestinian land. It seems that this Israeli idea was imported by the United States military in Iraq. After he started to build a wall along his country's borders with Mexico, Bush approved a plan to build a 5 kilometers long and 3.5 meters high wall in Al-A'zamiyya neighborhood in Baghdad. The A'zamiyya sectarian wall may be stretched even further to include and divide other neighborhoods. Bush claims that the wall will protect Iraqi neighborhoods from the violence that was caused in the first place by the United States occupation forces in Iraq. According to observers, Iraq's separation wall was Bush's last card in the so-called Baghdad security plan. The United States forces believe that the separation wall will protect Iraq's neighborhoods from booby-trapped vehicles, forgetting that mortar shells travel in the air. Some political observers believe that the United States administration does not have a clear military strategy in Iraq. The United States want to find a temporary solution to the crisis in Iraq, even if it is done at the expense of the Iraqi people.
The separation wall, which the U.S. forces are building in A'zamiyya, proves that they are the ones stirring up the sectarian strife in Iraq.
The United States have been building barriers and dividing the country in an attempt to improve the security situation in Iraq. But it seems that the United States troops' surge strategy in Iraq did not lead to positive results on the ground. Iraq should not be used as an experimental lab for Bush's peculiar ideologies, which often backfire on him.
The U.S. had made many accusations against a warden of a U.S. military prison in Iraq. The accusations include aiding the enemy. He was arrested and interrogated in Kuwait. A U.S. spokesman announced that Lieutenant Colonel William Steele has been arrested in Kuwait and has been charged with illegally providing detainees cellular phones. Steele was in charge of prison camp Cropper near Baghdad International Airport, where nearly 3,500 detainees are being held, including members of the late Iraqi President Saddam Hussein's regime. Saddam, who was executed last December, spent time in this prison during his detainment, which lasted for 3 years. On the security side, an Al-Arabiya correspondent in Baghdad said that 9 Iraqi soldiers were killed and dozens of others were injured in a suicide attack at an army checkpoint in the Kalasi district in the Diyala province. Meanwhile, an Al-Arabiya correspondent added that 3 people were killed and 7 others were wounded in an American shelling in Sadr city in the capital, Baghdad. The correspondent said that eyewitnesses confirmed that stores and buildings were damaged as a result of the attack. The U.S. Army made no comment. The White House has announced that U.S. President George Bush will exercise his right to veto a bill from the House of Representatives that links funding the war on Iraq to a timeline for withdrawal. The White House has called on the representatives to draft a new legislation. The House bill, which allocates more than $420 billion to fund the military operations, mainly in Iraq and Afghanistan, calls for redeploying U.S. forces by October at the latest. It also sets a non-binding goal to withdraw the largest number of combat forces by March 31st of next year. Hoshyar Zebari, the Iraqi foreign minister, held discussions with the Iranian president Mahmoud Ahmadinejad in Tehran. They discussed the international conference on Iraq, which is scheduled to be held early next month in Egypt. In the next few days, Tehran is expected to announce its position regarding participation in this conference. This is according to an announcement made by Iranian foreign minister Mona Motaki after his meeting yesterday with the Iraqi minister. In addition to the 6 neighboring Iraqi nations, Bahrain, Egypt, the Arab League, and the United Nations, it is expected that the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council will also be attending.
Lieutenant General Aboud Gambar, the commander of the Baghdad operations, oversaw the removal of the security barriers in the area of Abu Nuwas in central Baghdad.
The commander of the Baghdad operations confirmed that all the barriers will be removed after the city is completely purged of terrorist thugs.
The Abu Nuwas street breathed a sigh of relief after the removal of concrete barriers, which had been obstacles to vehicles for a long time. Various barriers and checkpoints on Abu Nuwas street are being removed under the orders of Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri Kemal al-Maliki.
Abu Nuwas street is a symbol for all the streets of Baghdad and a few other streets in the world. This street is an outlet for the residents of Baghdad. This situation changed, and then the Abu Nuwas street was cut off, closed off, and filled with security agencies. Under the orders of the General Commander of the Armed Forces, in accordance to the Honorable Prime Minister, the first step will be to open Abu Nuwas street. God willing, efforts are currently being made to remove the barriers, rebuild the street, and return security to Baghdad like in other safe areas.
Opening Abu Nuwas Street and removing everything that has enclosed it, from concrete walls to metal fences to any targeted buildings for any reason during the years after the fall of the Saddam regime, comes as part of the Enforcing the Law plan.
Abu Nuwas Street is one of the safe areas. God willing, Baghdadis will have good times on this street, along with their families.
Abu Nuwas Street is one of the largest streets in the Iraqi capital. It was constructed in the 1970s. Opening the street will help to reduce traffic jams on the Ra'af side of Baghdad, especially Saadun Street. Other barriers are anticipated to be removed. Al-Rashid Street and the Ministry of Interior Street, as well as 40 other closed streets in Baghdad, are all expected to be reopened. Sahar Al-Ibrahimi, Al-Iraqiya, Baghdad.
Sahar Al-Ibrahimi, Al-Iraqiya, بغداد.
In Turkey, the Justice and Development Party has selected its candidate for the upcoming presidential elections. After a state of anticipation, the Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan chose his foreign minister and right-hand man, Abdullah Gül, as the candidate for the Justice and Development Party. Although Erdogan gave up his presidential ambitions, secular members' qualms have not been calmed. The People's Party, the opposition, announced that its members will not participate in parliamentary elections to choose the president who will replace the current president, Necdet Sezer.
After long political maneuvering, the Turkish Prime Minister and head of the Justice Development Party, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, named his longtime friend, his deputy, second man in the party, and his foreign minister, Abdullah Gül, as the party's candidate for the presidential elections, who will be elected by the members of the Turkish parliament, which is overwhelmingly dominated by the Justice and Development Party.
After serious meetings and discussions with all sides, we decided on one person to be the Justice and Development Party's candidate for the 11th President of the Turkish Republic. He is a dear and longtime friend and a partner in the situation we are in today, my brother Abdullah Gül.
After announcing his name as a candidate for the 11th Turkish President, Abdullah Gül said at a press conference that the leader of the Justice and Development Party, Tayyip Erdogan, withdrew from nominating himself for the presidential candidate at his own free will and not out of fear of some demonstrations or some secular fronts who opposed his candidacy, as some parties have claimed. In response to a question about his wife's hijab, who would be the First Lady of Turkey if he wins the elections, he said,
"Everyone should respect other people's views. The Turkish constitution is clear about this. Turkey is a democratic, secular country. In the framework of democracy, every citizen can freely express his opinion."
Abdullah Gül, who earned a doctorate's degree in economics, entered the Turkish parliament for the first time in 1991 as a member of the Rafah party. In the government of Necmettin Erdogan, he was appointed as Minister of Foreign Affairs. After the Rafah party was dissolved, he joined the Fadila party, an offshoot of the Rafah party. He was nominated to be a leader of the party, but did not win. Then he helped to establish a new party called the Justice and Development Party with longtime friend Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He entered the parliamentary elections in 2002 and became prime minister, while the head of the party, Erdogan, was prohibited from assuming an official position because he was banned from politics. In a rare step, Gül gave up the prime ministership and gave it to Tayyip Erdogan after he was allowed to take office. Gül then became the foreign minister and the right-hand man to Erdogan. Observers believe that the presidential nomination of Abdullah Gül will create a political storm in the country. Others confirm that Gül, using his calm policies, may occupy the position and be a different president than his predecessors.
President Ahmadinejad says the Iranian youths have freely and knowingly opted for Islamic values. The president told the Supreme Youth Council on Thursday different walks of life, including women, have consciously chosen the Islamic dressing, adding efforts to remove veil from the Iranian females have to date led nowhere. Ahmadinejad said the Iranian youths are the driving force behind moves to conquer the country's scientific, political, defensive and ethical summits, adding Iranians have always selected their dressing style in accordance with Islamic values. He further said the enemy has adopted a defeatist approach in dealing with Iran, as it encourages inappropriate dressing to later shout over the loudspeakers that Tehran is cracking down on Iranian youths, something which will instill a sense of depression in the country. President Ahmadinejad told Iraqi Foreign Minister Hoshyar Zebari on Thursday removal of foreign forces and support for the Iraqi government and parliament hold the key to restoring security and maintaining independence in the war-torn country. The president said Iraq's neighbors bore the brunt of insecurity in the Muslim country, adding continued insurgency and the killing of the innocent people are clear signs of failure by the occupation force to secure the post-invasion country. Ahmadinejad added Tehran advocates the national sovereignty and enforcement of law in Iraq. Zebari, for his part, called for Iran's presence in Iraq's Neighbors Conference due to be held in Egypt on May the 3rd through the 4th. Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki said Thursday he is willing to visit Iran to convince Iranian officials to attend the May 3rd to the 4th meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh aimed at stabilizing Iraq. Al-Maliki told the Associated Press news agency that Iran's presence at next week's conference is crucial for Iraq and added, quote, "We will work on finding meetings between Iran and the United States of America during the session." Maliki reiterated that Iran's absence will be a drawback and said Iraqi Foreign Minister Hoshyar Zebari is currently in Iran to convince the country's officials to attend the summit. The U.S. says it is intent to rethink its 27-year-long Iran policy. U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice made the remark in Norway on Thursday, saying Washington is willing to change the course in dealing with Iran if Tehran halts enrichment work and resumes talks aimed at breaking a nuclear standoff with the West. Rice also said the U.S. is ready to sit at a negotiating table with Iran, adding no one can deny Tehran its right to non-military technology. She continued suspension of uranium enrichment by Iran is needed to jumpstart the negotiations, something which will bring an end to sanctions against Tehran. It comes as reports are unfolding that the U.S. President says Secretary Rice will meet with Iranian officials next week when the Iraq Security Conference convenes in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. President Bush told PBS News the U.S. State Secretary is likely to hold talks with her Iranian counterpart. The two-day meetings between Iran's top nuclear negotiator Ali Larijani and EU Foreign Policy Chief Javier Solana ended on Thursday in Ankara, Turkey. Following the final round of the negotiations, which was attended by Turkish Foreign Minister Abdullah Gül, Larijani, Solana and Gül took part in a press conference where Iranian top nuclear negotiators said new and interesting ideas were raised during the meetings.
نفس این کار این است که ما به یه پارادایم مشترکی برای حل مسئله برسیم.
But we are aiming just to reach out for a common paradigm to help settling this problem.
فکر می‌کنم در یک سری از امور ما به یه وحدت نظر نزدیک شدیم.
I think in some areas we are approaching a united view.
که بهترین راه حل این است که از طریق مذاکره مسئله حل بشه.
And that is to say the best approach is to have the issue settled through negotiations.
بر اساس مقررات و قوانین بین‌المللی مسئله حل بشه.
The issue could be settled based on law and international rules and regulations.
I think it's in itself, a very important development. As Dr. Rajani has said, we had a good meeting yesterday. That, without any doubt, is a very fundamental part of the resolution of a problem, to understand each other's positions better.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Feyerdahl Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only.